With volume 21 of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, we are getting closer to the end of the story and I finally got around to reading it. So in today's video, I will be breaking down the series of events that transpired in this newest volume, and there's a lot to talk about, such as the review of Shion and Shuna's new powers, some notable fights as well like Veldora vs Dagruel, Zegion vs Zelanus, and Diablo vs Vega, and the return of Rimuru Tempest. Also, I will only be doing a simple summary of the volume, and it goes without saying that this video will contain spoilers for volume 21. But if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and maybe subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. Now then, in the prologue, we are shown the reaction of everyone back in Rimuru's labyrinth after they sensed Rimuru's disappearance, and the various executives of Tempest were gathering for an emergency meeting. And despite the tense atmosphere, Zegion's resolute belief in their master allowed everyone to regain their composure, and they were making preparations to face Dino's group who are currently trying to invade the labyrinth. Also, Tensura will leave for Eurozania to rescue Carrera and Milim's forces who are still frozen. Then moving on to chapter 1, it continues to depict the battle between Luminous and Dagruel's forces. And to recap the conflict, it seems that Luminous's forces were starting to overwhelm Dagruel's forces, but Shion was still severely injured and Dagruel, who has activated Time Stop, was about to kill Luminous. However, Veldora would arrive in the suspended world to stop Dagruel, but as they were talking, Luminous was slowly getting familiar with the suspended world as well. And I found it funny that Veldora had the audacity to request for Dagruel to cancel the suspended world, just so he could make his heroic entrance again to impress Luminous. But anyways, their conversation was interrupted because Shion somehow started moving in the suspended world, and to explain how she achieved this, basically when she was defeated by Dagruel, she was frustrated about losing, but she also admired his performance and wanted to prove herself. So using her unique skill Cook, she literally brute forced the laws of the world and optimized her body until she could move in the suspended world. She would now have a rematch with Dagruel, but not before Veldora provided her with some magicules to replenish her energy, and she was doing surprisingly well against him. That's because in the suspended world where the laws of physics and magic don't apply, Shion's ability to manipulate the laws of cause and effect takes priority over everything else, making her attacks far stronger and more effective. But her advantage was gone when Dagruel lifted the suspended world after Luminous regained her ability to move, although they resumed their battle with Luminous, now providing support for Shion despite Veldora protesting against it because he wanted to show off. Regardless, Shion was eventually defeated by Dagruel again, but it was at this moment that Rimuru had disappeared, and because the restrictions that the mana seal placed on her unique skill Cook was gone as well, Shion finally awakens her ultimate skill, Lord of Tyranny Susano, giving her the power to defy the literal laws of the world. This allows Shion to recover, and thanks to Susano's ability to take the energy from Dagruel, then converting it to replenish herself and redirecting it back to him, each of her subsequent attacks were getting stronger. However, it still wasn't enough to defeat Dagruel, so he overwhelmed her again with Maelstrom Buster, and this time, he manages to kill her, but Luminous immediately revived her afterwards. But that isn't important because the most surprising part was that Dagruel was now bleeding and has even fallen on his knees. To explain, before his attack landed, Shion actually threw her Hercules Edge towards him, and then using her sub-skills Infinite Outcome along with Illusion Destruction to manipulate the laws of the world, the blade was able to directly cut him. And this causes Dagruel to acknowledge Shion's strength and battle prowess because she was apparently the only person throughout his life aside from Valdonava that has managed to make him bleed, which is definitely quite a compliment for her. Unfortunately, the battle wasn't over and it was Veldora's time to fight Dagruel, who summoned his brothers, and they'll combine to regain their true form, the mythical god of destruction that challenged Valdonava long ago. Veldora would then transform into his dragon form as well, and because of their intense aura, they ordered everyone to stop fighting so the Titans worked with Luminous to form a defensive barrier. That said, despite having fought plenty of times in the past, this was actually the first time Dagruel fought Veldora in this form, so he was quite confident in defeating him. But when the battle started, Dagruel would soon regret his overconfidence because he soon realized how much Veldora has grown and was now fighting using proper strategies like a true warrior, although Veldora still resorted to dirty tactics which annoyed Dagruel. Veldora even manages to provoke Dagruel into using his strongest attack, Quasar Break. This move would trap Veldora inside an isolated space and then destroying everything inside with a pseudo black hole. Of course, Veldora survived thanks to the probability manipulation of his ultimate skill, Chaos King Nilahotep, and even though he was severely injured, he succeeded in depleting almost 60% of Dagruel's maximum energy. Honestly, I'm glad the author decided to showcase more of Veldora being capable and competent, while still keeping to his usual goofy attitude. In any case, Dagruel knew that he was about to lose, so he compresses his remaining energy and reduces his size for one last battle with Veldora. and they literally went from a clash of godly beings to now a good old-fashioned melee with nothing but simple kicks and punches. Eventually, Veldora had enough fun and decided to end things with Fertile Paradox, a skill that covers the entire Holy Empire of Lubarius as well as the barren lands in the rainbow-colored darkness, but it wasn't actually an attack, rather it brought healing and growth because it not only rejuvenated everyone engulfed by the rainbow-colored darkness, even the ground and desert landscape were now full of greenery. And that wasn't all, this skill also sealed away the Dagruel brothers inside the earth, using their magic skills as the nucleus to rejuvenate everything, although Veldora did promise to release them once the war is over. However, his Fertile Paradox worked a little too well and destroyed most of the Holy City, but it did spread to Damagania, meaning that Dagruel no longer has to invade Luminous's territory for resources. But moving on, even though the war with Dagruel has ended, Valgrind will arrive with bad news because Milim has apparently destroyed the gates of the Heaven's Tower and that Ivaraj, the world-destroying dragon, will soon invade their world, so they needed to prepare for the upcoming battle against the Cryptids. Additionally, Valgrind orders Veldora to depart for the Sacred Tree because she predicts that Feldway will try to attack there again, so he lifted the Fertile Paradox and before Luminous was able to confront him about destroying her holy city, he quickly runs away. Then Valgrind informs Luminous of the upcoming battle and that she needs to provide refuge for the giants from Damagania. She agrees to help so Dagruel thanks her. Later they all discuss about preparing a defensive line at the Heaven's Tower, but realizing they lacked the manpower needed, Luminous decided to tell the world about the coming crisis and surprisingly, the world was quick to respond. They eventually gathered a force of 100,000 people all possessing rank A or above from all over the world. Some of the notable names include the Pegasus Knights led by Geyser Dwago, Hinata Sakaguchi with a Holy Knight Order, Masaki Honjo leading the Imperial Guards, the Titan Army of Dagruel and the Vampire Knights of Lubarius. Even Yom, Miran, Grucius and Razan were joining as well, and it actually made me emotional when I read this part because seeing all these familiar faces that Rimuru befriended or helped along the way, working together to protect the world just feels amazing. Having said that, there was a brief interlude involving Zelanus, and he was apparently undergoing life reconstruction after he absorbed the remains of his Insecta army, and based on his own estimations, his existence value was now comparable to even a true dragon, although we do have an exact value, he has an existence value that surpassed 1 billion. Also, it seems that his next targets were Zegion and Apito, because he wants to force Zegion to replace him as the Insecta king, and have Apito serve as the new queen to produce new children, which I'll go over later. Now then, from chapter 2 onwards excluding the epilogue, it mainly takes place inside Rimurus's labyrinth, covering the events that involve Dino's group trying to destroy the labyrinth and how Tempest will respond to the attack. To start, Vega, Dino, Pico, Gracia and Mai have just entered the labyrinth, but they don't actually have a plan. It was then Vega suggested that he releases magical bacteria created from his ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King Azidaka, on every level to consume the labyrinth. But because the labyrinth itself was made from imaginary matter, Vega's magical bacteria won't really have much effect, although later when he directly consumes the magical energy of the structure itself, only then his plan actually worked. Nevertheless, switching to the control room, Rimurus and the others were monitoring the progress of Vega's group, and because they know about his ability to create evil dragon spawns from organic materials, they removed most of the monsters and all the floor bosses from the labyrinth, instead relying on traps to delay them. Furthermore, after analyzing the existence values, they deemed Vega to be the primary threat, so they planned on isolating him inside one of the levels, but they needed to wait for Mai to become separated from him first before they could execute this plan, because the instantaneous movement will allow them to easily escape from the labyrinth. And it was only until they reached the 71st floor that Rimurus would start the isolation plan, because as Vega was trying to feed on the energy of the labyrinth, Dino and the three girls were hunting for organic materials to feed Vega. Additionally, as Rimurus was isolating Vega, she also wanted to punish Dino for his betrayal, so she trapped his group inside a coliseum, where Beretta, Zegion, Apito, Kumara and Ranga were waiting to fight them. With no choice but to participate, Dino proposes a one-on-one fight to buy time for Vega's plan, and Rimurus actually accepted, so they were given resurrection bracelets, but it was hilarious that Rimurus explicitly gave 5 to Dino, meaning she planned on killing him 5 times. Of course, revenge wasn't the only thing on her mind. She actually agreed to Dino's proposal because in the control room, they also needed time to analyze Dino's group to discover a method to break Feldway's control. That said, the first fight was a rematch between Kumara and Pico, because in volume 16, Pico had escaped before a victor was decided, although this time, Kumara easily defeats her. As for the second battle, Apito was fighting against Mai, and even though Mai's fighting style was a perfect counter to Apito, she still lost. That's because during the fight, Apito had apparently received Peleus' divinity and status as the Insecta Queen, which allowed Apito to easily overwhelm Mai to win the battle. Moving on to the third battle, Ranga was supposed to fight Gracia, but Gad wanted a rematch against her, so Benimaru approved, and unsurprisingly, he manages to defeat her. With that, it was finally Dino's turn and he will face Beretta first, but knowing that Ramirez wanted to punish him, he wasn't actually fighting back, so he will be killed by Beretta. Then the next fighter was Apito, and she was even more brutal than Beretta, torturing him before killing him. And I do feel bad for Dino because his suffering lasted quite long, with Beretta sometimes helping Apito, and even Kumara would join in the torture as well. But even though Ramirez enjoyed seeing Dino suffer, she still hoped that Dino and his friends would break free from Feldway's control. Even Shuna felt pity for them and wanted to help. And surprisingly, this triggered an evolution, causing both her unique skills analyst and creator to combine and evolve into the ultimate skill Yaoyorozu. Now, although it wasn't explicitly stated how her skills evolved, but Shuna later hinted that some unknown power across space and time had intervened, and it was most likely that Seal was responsible. In any case, returning to Dino, he has apparently died a total of 5 times, and he soon discovers their intentions for killing him, but lamented that it was impossible to break free from Feldway's ultimate dominion. However, he did briefly contemplate about using his Sloth King Belphegor to override the control circuit inside Heavenly King Astarte, but afraid Feldway might discover this and indirectly hurt his friends, he dismissed the idea. But Shuna soon arrives to offer assistance, and with some encouragement, Dino proceeded with his idea, destroying the control circuit by fusing both his ultimate skills to form the ultimate skill, Lord of the Fallen Astaroth. Also at the same time, Shuna activates her new ultimate skill to replicate Dino's process, and applying it onto his friends to rewrite their skills. Pico's Rigor King Jibril would now evolve into the Lord of Strictness Jibril, while Gracia's Glory King Haniel evolve into Light King Hamiel, and Mai's ultimate enchantment World Map evolve into the ultimate skill Terra Matter. They were now free from Feldway's control, and Shuna will mention that she was only able to do this because she received the knowledge across space and time, meaning it was thanks to Seal again. So to continue, Vega was still oblivious that he has been isolated and believed that his plan to dominate the labyrinth was working, but Zegion would interrupt his boasting by making his presence known. Vega would then summon 4 evil dragon spawns to attack Zegion, but after he easily destroyed them, he proceeded to pummel Vega, so he panicked and summoned 4 self-regenerating rings to protect him. And thinking that Zegion wasn't fast enough to break the rings, Vega used his strongest attack, Infinite Ether, on Zegion. This was the skill that turns all material into dust and consumes them. But because Vega copied this from Moss, Zegion knew how to nullify the effects, and not only did this left Vega surprised, he was now overwhelmed with a sense of fear, especially when Zegion broke through the rings that protect him. So Zegion resumes his attacking, but before he could kill Vega, he was suddenly attacked by Zelanus, who had broken through the isolated space. This also gave Vega the chance to hide and recover, although he does come back later. Anyways, having defeated and captured Zegion, Zelanus headed straight for Apito, and even though Gelt tried to protect her, he was promptly knocked unconscious in a single hit. Luckily, before Zelanus could capture Apito as well, Diablo steps in to stop him, and surprisingly, even though he greatly outclassed Diablo in terms of existence value, Zelanus felt the same level of anxiety that he had experienced when he fought Milim. Their fight would begin, but somehow Diablo always predicted Zelanus' attacks. Diablo also tried to provoke him verbally, and even though it failed, he was still annoyed at how persistent Diablo was. But the battle would slowly turn into a stalemate, although it wasn't favoring Diablo either, because the Labyrinth had sustained a tremendous amount of damage, so he had to think of solutions. That was when Zelanus broke the Forbidden Rule, insulted Rimuru, and this obviously angered all his subordinates, especially Zegion, who literally returned from the brink of death because he couldn't stand this disrespect. And like a total badass, Zegion outright proclaimed that he would defeat Zelanus, so Dino gave Zegion his Crumbling Fang, which integrated into his body, forming a pair of shining wings called Crumbling Wings. With that, Zegion joined the battle and Diablo actually stepped down, letting Zegion be the one to punish Zelanus for his insolence, so it was time for the father-son to fight. And it was quite insane despite having been defeated by Zelanus not too long ago, and the vast differences in their existence values, Zegion was already starting to overwhelm his father, and with each attack, Zegion was destroying more and more of his exoskeleton. That's because Zegion had essentially tapped into the negative energy of Rimuru's nihilistic collapse and was now circulating it throughout his body, meaning each of his attacks carried huge amounts of destructive energy. Zegion eventually defeated Zelanus, but before succumbing to the injuries, the Insecta King would entrust his ultimate skill Sephiroth, the Lord of Life, to his son. Also, even though Zegion rejected the Insecta throne to become king, Zelanus was still happy because he was proud that he finally created a son that was able to surpass him. In the end, Zegion and Apito both forgave Zelanus, while everyone in the control room was in utter shock over Zegion's one-sided victory. However, the crisis wasn't over because, like I said just now, Vega was still alive and he has managed to spread his roots throughout the main body of the labyrinth. And with the corpse of Zelanus still present, Vega releases 4 evil dragon spawns to create chaos around the labyrinth while he consumed the corpse. So with his presence now revealed, Diablo engaged Vega in battle, letting Dino and the others handle the evil dragon spawns. And Dino actually decided to be serious for once, so he lifted the restrictions on his body to reveal his strongest fighting form. He was now wearing full mythical grade equipment, even manifesting 2 of the most powerful secret weapons, the Golden Sword Excalibur and the Dark Sword Caliburn. In this form, he easily destroyed the evil dragon spawns, but because of Vega's authority, they were constantly regenerating. Later, Pico and Gracia also lifted their restrictions and revealed their fighting forms to help Dino, while Zegion and Apito were protecting Mai, predicting that Vega might target her. As for Diablo, he found the battle with Vega to be boring because apparently Vega was too unsophisticated and stupid. It was funny that Diablo even regretted letting Zegion fight Zelanus. Nonetheless, Diablo still took the fight somewhat seriously and using nihilistic collapse as well. He was utterly destroying Vega, but this causes Vega to panic and lose control. He was now desperately spreading his influence throughout the labyrinth to take in more power. But even with his existence value consistently growing, Diablo was still overwhelming him and predicting that Vega might try to escape by capturing Mai or transferring his consciousness to one of his evil dragon spawns. Diablo informed Benimaru, concluding that they needed to first deal with one of the evil dragon spawns that escaped to the lower levels. Also, Benimaru will formulate a new plan for Vega. They will freeze all operations within the labyrinth, isolating the infected levels to stop the spread of its cells, and then purging everything into a space-time void. But before they could commence with the new plan, Hakuro and the 4 Dragon Lords were struggling against the evil dragon spawn at the lower levels, and because Benimaru was responsible for bringing back everyone inside the isolated zone with his space-time domination, Therese volunteered to handle the evil dragon spawn. When Therese arrived, he took over and used Draconic Flare, the same skill he had once used against Rimuru to completely incinerate the evil dragon spawn. Having resolved the threat at the lower level, Ramirez with help from Beretta were about to commence the Purge, while Benimaru enters the isolated zone to evacuate everyone inside. Now back to Vega, he was still desperately trying to escape, but realizing his plans had failed, he decided to release all his magical bacteria and cause an explosion throughout the isolated zone to take everyone down with him. This actually annoyed Diablo because he knew Vega was dumb enough to try something like self-destruct, but he already has countermeasures prepared, so using Temptation King Azazel, he removes Vega's consciousness. Although before that happened, Vega had used parallel thinking to take control of one of his evil dragon spawns, but Mai quickly jumps in front of him, and after she said goodbye to Dino, Pico and Gracia, Mai used Terra Matter to teleport her along with Vega to a place beyond space and time so that he will never return. But with Ramirez about to purge the isolated zone, they were forced to leave, so Diablo quickly destroyed Vega's main body. However, their mission wasn't over, because fearing that Vega might regenerate using the cells he scattered throughout the 30 plus levels that he infected, Benimaru suggested they all use space-time domination and combine their strongest attacks to permanently destroy the discarded levels. So Benimaru, Diablo, Zegion and Dino joined together to form a tetrahedron, pouring their magic into the ritual, and when their energies aligned, they activated the quartet skill Breakdown Nostalgia, creating the ultimate destruction never seen before, and the discarded levels were now destroyed. With that finished, they all returned to the control room and they basically reflected on everything that has happened so far. And there was actually a brief sequence depicting Mai and Vega drifting in the void, but even though he has captured her, Mai wasn't actually afraid of dying because she knew that Vega needed her alive. That's because even if Vega consumes and takes her powers, he doesn't have the mental capacity to perform the complex calculations needed to perform space-time leaps, and obviously Vega knew this as well. However, they were suddenly hit by a powerful space-time storm and Vega manages to survive, but Mai on the other hand has disappeared and it's unknown whether she is alive or dead. Although with her gone, Vega was now truly trapped inside the empty void with no means of escaping. Also, this space-time storm wasn't caused by the quartet skill, and it was actually caused by someone else, as we'll soon see. Now for the epilogue, Rimuru will awaken to find himself floating in the empty void, but according to Seal, Feldway had used chronosaltation to send him across space and time to the literal end of the universe. This also means that Feldway won in this specific timeline, and Rimuru was quite angry at the idea that all life has ended, but when Seal suggested to use the nihilistic energy in this dead universe and his memories to create a perfect copy of the world he once knew, Rimuru obviously declined because he'd rather be condemned to wander in this empty universe alone than comfort himself by creating a false world. His answer actually satisfied Seal, and she was apparently just testing Rimuru's resolve. Because when he was unconscious, it seems that she has already developed a universal space-time leap that allows them them to return to the original time. So Rimuru activates Space-Time Leap for the first time, and he was actually the reason behind the space-time storm that hit Vega and Mai. He was now returning to kick Felway's ass and save Milim from his control. But yeah, that's roughly what happened in volume 21, and of course I left out the smaller details, keeping only the important parts because I still recommend reading the volume itself. Additionally, I wanted to share my opinions regarding this volume as well, and I mainly thought they could have elaborated more on some of the fights that happened inside the Labyrinth, because Zegion's fight with Zelanus as well as Diablo's fight with Vega definitely felt monotonous. But I did enjoy seeing the supporting characters getting more development and have their own moments, showing that even without Rimuru, they are still capable of overcoming challenges. Also, Luminous giving a speech to unite everyone against a common threat, although cliche, still felt like an amazing moment, and I'm looking forward to see how they'll handle the battle with the cryptids. Anyways, volume 21 was fun to read. We got some decent character development, reviews and power-ups, although the action could have been better. Hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown of volume 21, and I definitely recommend reading it yourself. Also, what are your favorite moments from the volume? Feel free to share answers down below. Mine was seeing Shion getting her ultimate skill and Ramirez bullying Dino. And for more breakdowns like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button to stay up to date with all my content. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.